What was it like working with Skip and Shannon?
So I think people forget that I worked on Skip and Shannon because it was so long ago, but we launched Undisputed, and that was just an experience that is really special to me.
Fox host allegedly told her to, quote, get over it, end quote. As for Skip Bayless, Faraji says he touched her inappropriately and propositioned her for sex, offering her $1.5 million, end quote.
I've uncovered a 42-page lawsuit against FS1 that has some disturbing allegations, claiming that many members inside FS1 committed numerous sexual crimes and created a very toxic work environment. Analysts like Skip Bayless, Joy Taylor, and Emmanuel Acho are just a couple of the people in the center of a scandal that could break the entire company. Welcome to the dark side of NBA media. Before we actually get into the lawsuit, let me give you guys a little bit of context because some of you guys might be confused. So on January 5th, what seemed like out of nowhere, there was a lawsuit that was being reported. According to AJ Perez, a senior reporter for Front Office Sports, he reported that a former Fox Sports hairdresser alleged a network exec of using his position to sexually harass women. And the headline also brings up the fact that she refused a $1.5 million offer from Skip Bayless to have sex with him. Now, when it comes to these headlines, it can sometimes be misleading. So I wanted to do my research. I wanted to not only look at the article, but look at the lawsuit. And when I found out there was a 42-page lawsuit, I decided to look at the entire thing. Yes, I went through 42 pages of this lawsuit and I have summed up everything. I do want to mention the fact that in this video, there are some things that I'm not going to talk about because they're just irrelevant to the main point of this video. But if you do want to see the entire lawsuit, I'll put a link to it in the description below. It'll be the first link. But for example, there was something about her having a kit fee like 7 years into her career with Fox Sports, and I just really didn't think that made sense to put in the video. But again, if you don't believe me and you think I'm leaving important stuff out, you can check out the lawsuit for yourself. Now, if I was to go chronological order, I feel like some events would get kind of out of context and it wouldn't make sense. So basically, I've built up a character profile of the main important people that we have to discuss in this lawsuit. Now, when it comes to defendants, there's only three. We have Charlie Dixon, Skip Bayless, and Joy Taylor. There are other people brought up in the lawsuit casually, but I'll talk about them obviously when it comes to that point. Also, Fox Sports as an entity is brought up as defendants, but that's obvious, it's a company. Now let's talk about the plaintiff for just a second. The plaintiff is a former hairdresser for Fox Sports named Nushin Farahi. I hope I'm saying her name right. She worked at Fox Sports as a full-time hairdresser from 2016 to 2024. According to the suit, there are two different types of complaints. We have class action complaints and individual complaints. There's 3 class action and 6 individuals. Now, I'm not going to talk about the class action complaints because, again, I just don't think it's relevant to the point of this video, but it's stuff like failure to pay wages, reimbursement business expenses, and some unlawful business practices. Again, I'm not going to talk about it, but this is essentially against Fox Sports, the company. Now, the individual complaints, this is the stuff that we're going to talk about in this video. And all of these complaints are either to one person or multiple different people. This includes crimes like sexual battery, hostile work environment because of sex, gender, race, or national origin, failure to prevent harassment, negligent supervision, retaliation, and wrongful termination. So now that we have context about what's going on, let's actually talk about the individuals in the lawsuit. I think I said this earlier, but to do this entire lawsuit in order would just leave things out of context and just mess up the timeline of events. So I'm just gonna go person by person, but it's gonna be somewhat chronological. It'll make sense as I talk about it. I think it's only fair that we start with Charlie Dixon. For those of you that don't know, Charlie Dixon is an executive vice president for Fox Sports. According to Fox Sports themselves, he started in 2015, and from what I can tell, he's still with the company. So in this lawsuit, Mr. Dixon isn't exactly talked about in the brightest of lights. For one, the first encounter that Miss Ferrari had with Mr. Dixon was actually a dinner with Joy Taylor. They were sitting together and Miss Ferrari thought maybe they were sleeping together, maybe they were together, but she didn't really know and she didn't say anything. It would later be discovered in the lawsuit that allegedly an anonymous employee went to Miss Ferrari to tell her that she was fired for not having sex with Mr. Dixon. We would also find out later in the lawsuit that there were multiple people who were fired for talking about sexual harassment or not having sex with Mr. Dixon. Something else that was highlighted in the lawsuit was one of Mr. Dixon's first hires when he got to Fox Sports. He hired a guy by the name of Bobby Diaz, who apparently was best known for openly groping and sexually harassing women employees. Now, to be fair, he was let go at one point, but the fact he was hired at all is insane to me. Now, I think it's it's time we move on from Mr. Dixon as an individual. We're going to talk about him later in the lawsuit because he's brought up multiple times, but I want to switch over to Joy Taylor because this is probably the second worst thing in this entire lawsuit. Honestly, depending who you ask, this could be the worst thing in here. Now, most of you know who Joy Taylor is. She's a network host that has worked on multiple shows in her career. She's a very successful woman in sports media, to say the least. Well, this lawsuit might depict the way you view Joy Taylor as not just an analyst, but a human being. So to give some context on how Miss Ferrari and Joy Taylor actually met each other, Joy Taylor met her a couple years ago before she worked for Fox Sports, and then she referenced her to Fox Sports, and then essentially she got a job working there part-time and then full-time in 2016, you know the rest. Now I want to jump back to an event that happened a while back. Remember when I was talking about Charlie Dixon and I brought up the fact that he was with Joy Taylor at that dinner? Well, Joy Taylor was sleeping with Charlie Dixon. In page 6, section 25 of the lawsuit, it says the following. Around August 2016, Miss Ferrari attended a dinner with Miss Taylor and her husband and Mr. Dixon and his wife. During the dinner, Miss Taylor's husband became suspicious that Miss Taylor and Mr. Dixon were having a sexual relationship. Soon after the dinner, Miss Taylor's husband found evidence of the inappropriate relationship and divorced Mrs. Taylor. It also said somewhere in the lawsuit that Mr. Dixon paid off Miss Taylor's ex-husband. I think he paid for part of their wedding or something like that. I cannot remember, to be honest. But if you're wondering why he didn't go public, well, this is the exact reason why. Now, at one point, Miss Farahi was at a rooftop party and Mr. Dixon went up to her. Apparently, he put his hand on her lower back and actually grabbed her ass. Miss Farahi rejected his advances, not just once, but on numerous occasions. Mortified by what happened, Miss Farahi didn't know who to go to, so she went to Joy Taylor, someone that she thought was her friend. But what Miss Taylor said next is absolutely shocking. When Miss Taylor found out about the advances, she just told Miss Farahi to get over it because Mr. Dixon is why Joy Taylor had a job in the first place, and he could get both of their jobs taken away because Joy Taylor got Miss Farahi her job. So basically she said, shut up or else this is gonna get bad. Which, by the way, a woman saying this is absolutely crazy. You would think a woman would look out for another woman, but no, she completely just disregarded what she said. Oh, but trust me, this is not even the worst part of the story, because in February of 2020, Miss Taylor would meet Miss Farahi for lunch, and when Miss Farahi arrived, she found Joy Taylor with Emmanuel Acho. Mr. Acho is another analyst. You've probably seen him on FS1 multiple times. A few months later, after meeting Mr. Acho at lunch, Miss Farahi noticed him in a hallway while at work. Miss Farahi would ask Miss Taylor, like, hey, does he work here? And she would confirm and say, yeah, he does. And basically, he wanted to get him to recommend her for a new show that was going to be going live soon. Which Miss Farahi was like, hey, I don't know if you should be sleeping with two different people at the same time. It could end very bad if Mr. Dixon finds out. And the following is a quote from the lawsuit itself. Quote, she also explained that she was also now powerful, and once Mr. Dixon was no longer useful to her, she would follow through on her plan to tell the company that he forced himself onto her. A person that she was allegedly having a consensual relationship with for 4 years. Apparently, when he didn't need her anymore, she was gonna accuse this guy of sexual crimes. See, people are bringing up the fact that she had sex with Emmanuel Acho and Charlie Dixon and a bunch of other people. But in reality, that's not the main point of this. The main point of this is that she was going to lie on someone and try to get them in trouble and use them for her own benefit. Honestly, I feel like this is a detail of the lawsuit that people are just not looking over or they just don't care about. Like, haha, she slept with this person and that person. But we're not mentioning the fact that she was getting ready for a whole other scandal off of a complete lie. And the worst part is that nothing was going to happen to her. Honestly, if this is true, I'm glad she got outed, because not only is she a terrible person because she cheated on her husband at one point, but she's a terrible person because, well, I don't have to say it, you know why. And what I hate about this is now multiple people are going after other female analysts. Another person like Mina Kimes, who's on the NFL side of things. People are saying that she's sleeping with everyone because she has a job. It sucks because if this is true, this could set back women in sports media of a couple years, because now people are gonna think, oh, this woman that's on my TV, she just slept with everyone to get to the top. Now we have one more person we need to talk about, and it is probably the worst thing on here. Skip Bayless. I don't think I need to give him an introduction. You already know who he is. But if you don't know who he is, basically all you need to know is he was a sports analyst for Fox Sports from I think 2016 to 2024. So as as you guys know, Miss Farahi was a hairdresser, and Skip Bayless wanted to get a haircut. So of course, Skip Bayless got his haircut from her. It's a pretty simple thing. The conversations they had started off pretty normally. It was Skip, talking about his work, talking about his life, his career, his family, probably hating LeBron, just the normal stuff. But eventually, things reportedly got sexual. As time went on, he was more comfortable touching Miss Farahi. He would give her lingering kisses, he would kiss her on the cheek, he would apparently grab her waist and actually grab her ass at one point. Mr. Bayless, and I am not joking when I say this, at one point would call her voluptuous. Now, Miss Farahi's first language was not English, so she had to ask what that meant from someone else. And needless to say, she was pretty mortified. In 2021, Miss Farahi had developed issues in her left ovaries and she thought she had cancer. She would tell this to Mr. Bayless to hopefully make him take pity and stop the advances. The fact that she had to do that is absolutely scary to me. Like, how bad was this man? Well, you guys are about to find out, because instead Mr. Bayless would kiss her and offer $1.5 million to sleep with him. Yes, $1.5 million to have sex with someone. She said no multiple times, and then weeks later, Mr. Bayless out of nowhere would angrily accuse Miss Farahi of sleeping with Shannon Sharpe. His reasoning was, I guess he saw her body language and the way she talked to him, but she said she was a hairdresser, she's friendly with all of her clients. But Mr. Bayless would continue to say that she was doing this and he would berate her about it. Now, it was later found out in 2023 that this was just not true at all. Mr. Bayless would find out there was nothing going on and he would apologize. But then once again in August of 2024, Skip Bayless was getting a haircut when he told Miss Farahi that he fantasizes about having sex with her, and the more she said no, the more he wanted her. And it was not too long after Undisputed was canceled, Miss Farahi was basically told her services were not needed, essentially getting fired after 8 years working for the company. Okay, so that's a lot to unpack. First of all, if this is true, then Skip Bayless is fucking disgusting. I know a lot of people are not talking about this as much because they said he's a meme, but I'm sorry, there's no world that normalizes this shit. This is weird. This is straight up weird. And $1.5 million, what's wrong with you, bro? Like, you convinced someone to marry you out of all people, and now you're trying to sleep with someone that you work with. What the fuck is wrong with you? And then when she said no, you'd say, oh yeah, now I want you more. You're fucking weird. Oh, and for the record, I'm not saying the term allegedly or this is true to say that Miss Farahi is lying. I am only saying that because we don't know if these allegations are 100% true. I said this earlier, but this is going to go to trial. So hopefully we see some of these people testify and we actually find out if this is the truth. But I can't just go around saying, oh, this is true, I know for fact, because that's just not true when that's probably illegal in some way. I mean, it's the reason why I've kind of tried to keep my opinion to myself, except if it has to do with their character, because that's something that we can all morally judge. Now, to end off this video, I just want to say again, if this is true, then this whole situation is bad. It does suck that this is probably a common thing in a lot of corporate areas, because I think a lot of places in sports media need to be reevaluated. Not just sports media, but corporate as a whole, because there is some shady shit that goes on behind closed doors. The thing about humans is we're all hiding something. We're all not 100% good people, but it just depends on what we're hiding and how bad it truly is. Hopefully this goes to trial and we eventually find out the truth. But for now, let FS1 crash and burn.